Hey everyone, it's John Pocorobo with Rain King LLC. I thought I'd put out a short video on a trading hack that I've used over the years, and it's a trading hack for using on flattish bases. So what this hack is to look quickly at a flat base and try to get a head start on determining if it's under accumulation or not. And if you go to how to make monies in stock, a flat base has to be at least 5 weeks, and it wants to have a depth of no more than 10 to 15%. Now, usually when we have big leading stocks, they will form, after they break out, they will form a stage 2 flat base. It's pretty common after they have already made a good move. And what's happening is there's a digestion going on of the gains. And that digestion could take at least 5 weeks on the chart. And what's happening in that digestion is there's going to be some institutions that will be reducing their positions because they think the stock is now overvalued. And there are some institutions that are still accumulating stock because their research shows that this stock could go higher based on their modeling and their future valuation for the company. So this shows up in a flat base, and we're going to look at a hack that you can use to try and get a head start. So the point of the hack is to really size up quickly. Is this stock under accumulation or distribution? And the way we'll do that is we'll find the average price between the high and the low, and we'll go over some examples here, and we'll draw a line at the midpoint of the high and low. Then we will count the number of closes above and below the line. And then if we have a situation where the majority of the closes are above the line, that's an indication of demand. And we actually could consider buying the stock after 5 weeks, which is the criteria for a flat base structure. So let's look at this example of Etsy from 2018. The stock actually had a gap up, it gapped out of the base, and you can see MarketSmith identified this little flat base. So if we look at this a little closer on a daily chart, here's the daily chart. And for illustration purposes, I've shown we've got the high at 45.59 and the low at 39.15. And when you draw a line at the midpoint of all that, and we start counting. So we start looking at marking every close above the high in black, all the closes below the midpoint in red. And in this case, there were 21 closes above, 14 closes below. So it's showing that this flat base is under net accumulation. It's a quick way to get a read. Here's Microsoft from the fall of 2018. Weekly chart on the left, you can see nice prior move, very nice move, and the stock starts to consolidate. And then on the daily chart on the right, you can see we've drawn the midpoint of the base, and we've looked at all the closes in the green shaded area as opposed to all of the closes below the midpoint in the pink area. In this case, Microsoft had 41 closes above and 20 closes below. The stock was showing that it still had net accumulation. The stock eventually gapped out of that base. And if you go back to the weekly chart, the stock made another leg higher. So let's look at Lattice Semiconductor. This is from the fall of 2019. Again, on the left is the weekly chart. The stock had a nice move up and it started moving sideways into a base. Again, doing the same exercise, you'll notice that in this particular case, there's many more closes below the midpoint of the base. 51 closes below, only 29 above. So this base is showing distribution. On the whole, the sideways period is showing that there's more sellers than buyers. In this case, Lattice Semiconductor tried to break out. You can see here it broke out, didn't get very, very far, and the breakout completely failed. There was more heavy distribution. There was a head for this stock, and the base breakout failed. Okay, so let's go now to a couple of examples that are much more recent. I called up these because they were more recent to see if what it would show us. Here's Excellus Technologies. This is a semiconductor equipment company. And Again, here is the chart on the left, the weekly chart, and you can see the very strong move up, a 70% move, and the stock has been consolidating, trying to move sideways. And particularly the last 5 weeks are within this parameter of 15% or less for a flat base. You can see some tight weekly closes, which is constructive. When you look at the detail of the daily chart, and we find the high, the low, the midpoint, we actually see there's 5 closes above the midpoint and 15 closes below the midpoint. So it shows currently this base is showing net distribution. Now, that being said, there's a couple of really positive things we want to keep watching. One, you'll notice that the red is the 50-day moving average, and we are consistently getting support at the 50-day with a number of very, very tight closes in here. That is positive and constructive. So this is one where we really want to keep watching the stock. Can it get above the midpoint and build out the base structure and show many more closes over here that are actually showing net accumulation? Or does this base structure shake out and possibly completely break down? We'll watch this one carefully. On the weekly chart, it looks very good and constructive. You'll notice that the weekly volume profile shows big blue spikes, and actually the weeks that were down in red are on much, much lower volume. That's a very good profile of big blue up weeks. So this looks constructive, but at the moment, this stock is still digesting with some distribution. We're trying to understand if this distribution is normal and will be absorbed by the market, setting it up for another leg higher, or is this stock really had its run and the stock will roll over? So this one is not currently looking great, but we want to keep watching. And one other, this is Exact Sciences. On the left, we have the weekly chart. You'll notice that it started to get much tighter the last 4 or 5 weeks. And then when we look at this flat base, this is a 7-week flat base, 12% deep. And we got our high and our low, and we start to count above and below the midpoint. We have 22 closes above and only 11 closes below the line. So the flat base is showing net accumulation. So that's a very, very positive sign. And if you look at the broader pattern, you can see that this is actually what Mark Minervini would call a VCP. Each sell-off has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. You're getting volatility contraction and tightening. So that's another positive feature of this base. And you'll also notice that the blue spikes are dominating more than the red. So there's some positive things going on this one. None of these are recommendations. They're just trying to illustrate the hack and the concept. So to wrap up, the summary of this hack is we want to see at least 5 weeks of action in order to be able to use this hack of sideways action. And the context is important. The stock you're looking at should have already made a big move before it starts to consolidate. And again, the concept is some institutions are reducing their positions while others are accumulating positions, and we want to see net accumulation in the pattern. Again, it's just a trading hack I've used over the years. It doesn't always work, but it can provide some edge and get you a head start into a leading name that you're watching. That's all the time we have for now. Hopefully this trading hack is helpful. Here's how you can reach me on Twitter, YouTube, and my email. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.